The small caravan sat nestled among the permanent pitches, its windows reflecting the quiet German countryside. For decades, it was a familiar sight at the Lugda campsite, a seemingly innocuous fixture. Children played nearby, their laughter echoing through the trees. Parents waved, trusting. No one saw the darkness that had already taken root inside, the silent horror that had been unfolding for 20 long years, right there in plain sight. Lugda, a town in North Rhine-Westphalia, Germany, is the kind of place where community ties run deep. A place where neighbors know neighbors, and children ride their bikes freely down tree-lined streets. A permanent campsite on the outskirts served as a popular retreat, a place where families would spend summer holidays, a hub of activity and laughter. It was here, amidst this idyllic setting, that Andreas V made his home. He lived in a caravan, a permanent resident, a familiar face, known to many of the families who frequented the site. He might offer to help with a broken tent, or simply pass the time chatting with parents. He cultivated an image of approachability, an ordinary man in an ordinary place, which was precisely the camouflage he needed. For 2 decades, from 1998 until 2018, Andreas V systematically abused children. His victims numbered in the hundreds, an unimaginable scale of suffering hidden behind the veneer of a normal campsite existence. Some children were brought to him by parents who genuinely trusted him, seeing him as a benign figure, someone safe. They had no idea of the true nature of the man they were leaving their children with, or the horrors that awaited them. Others, however, were brought by adults who knew exactly what was happening, adults who were complicit in the atrocities. The youngest victim was a mere 3 years old, a tiny life irrevocably scarred before it had barely begun. The quiet, idyllic setting of the campsite became a stage for a silent, sprawling nightmare, unfolding in the shadows of the very community meant to protect its most vulnerable. Imagine the weight of suspicion, the gut-wrenching realization that something is terribly wrong. Before his eventual arrest, a formal complaint regarding Andreas V reached the Youth Welfare Services. This wasn't a whisper or a rumor, it was a documented warning, a cry for help that entered the official channels designed specifically to protect children. In a world where we rely on systems to act as a safety net, this complaint should have been a red flag, an immediate call to action. But instead, it landed in the bureaucratic labyrinth, and there, it simply stopped moving. The complaint, a vital piece of the puzzle, languished. The mechanism designed to prevent such a catastrophe failed. The silence that followed was not one of peace, but of continued suffering. What makes the failure even more incomprehensible is what happened next. After a background check by the Youth Welfare Center, the very same institution that had received a formal complaint, Andreas V was assigned a foster child. A little girl, only 4 or 5 years old, was placed into his care. This was not an oversight in isolation, this was a systemic breakdown of monumental proportions. For approximately 2 years, this child, entrusted to the care of a man who was already the subject of a serious complaint, lived with him at the campsite. She became one of his primary victims, suffering repeated abuse under the very roof meant to provide her safety and stability. The systems meant to protect her had not only failed to respond to a warning, they had actively placed her into the hands of her abuser. It beggars belief. How could a formal complaint be filed, and yet a child still be placed with the accused? The consequences of that inaction were devastating and irreversible. The long reign of terror finally came to an end in late 2018. Investigators moved in, searching the caravan and the surrounding property at the Lugda campsite. What they discovered was not hidden in secret compartments or buried deep underground. The evidence was, in many ways, in plain sight. Hundreds of files were recovered, a sickening archive of the abuse. While some of the recordings had been made by Andreas V himself, the sheer volume of material suggested a far wider network of complicity, a horrifying testament to how many people knew, and how many participated. This wasn't a single, isolated monster, it was a web, intricately spun over 2 decades, affecting an entire community. The idyllic facade of the campsite shattered, revealing the grotesque reality beneath. The numbers were staggering, 285 confirmed victims. A full 2 decades of abuse, spanning generations of children who had visited or lived at the Lugda campsite. The investigation revealed a horrifying picture of systemic failure, not just within the youth welfare services, but across multiple institutions. How could such an extensive operation go unnoticed for so long? How many chances were missed? How many red flags ignored? The sheer volume of victims pointed to a failure of communal vigilance, a tragic breakdown of the very social fabric meant to protect children. The question echoed through the traumatized community: how many others knew, or suspected, and remained silent? The silence of the forest at the campsite now seemed less peaceful, and more like a deafening roar of complicity. Andreas V was not alone. The investigation quickly revealed that he had accomplices, individuals who actively participated in or facilitated the abuse. Mario S. and Heiko V. were identified, arrested, and later convicted for their roles in the horrific crimes. This discovery deepened the sense of betrayal and outrage. It wasn't just one predator operating in isolation, it was a network, a small circle of individuals preying on the most innocent. The existence of these accomplices highlighted the insidious nature of the operation, how it was sustained and perpetuated by more than just a single individual. The truth was far more chilling than anyone had initially imagined, painting a picture of deliberate, organized depravity that thrived unchecked for far too long within the unsuspecting community. The scale of the Lugda case and the blatant systemic failures it exposed could not be ignored. It prompted a parliamentary inquiry in North Rhine-Westphalia, a formal investigation into the catastrophic breakdown of youth welfare services. This was not just about holding individuals accountable, it was about understanding how the system itself could falter so completely. The inquiry confirmed what many had suspected and feared: systemic failures at multiple levels. From the initial handling of the formal complaint to the tragic placement of a foster child, the cracks in the system were profound and numerous. It was a damning indictment of the very institutions designed to be the last line of defense for children. The report detailed not just human error, but institutional complacency and a lack of proper oversight. This wasn't merely a failure of process, it was a failure of moral responsibility, a devastating revelation for the entire nation. In 2020, Andreas V stood trial. The weight of 2 decades of unspeakable crimes, 285 confirmed victims, bore down on the courtroom. He was convicted and received the maximum sentence under German law, 13 years. But the court also imposed an additional, crucial measure: unlimited security custody. This meant that while his nominal sentence was 13 years, he would likely never be released. The nature of his crimes and the danger he posed to society dictated that he remain incarcerated indefinitely. It was a measure of justice, however incomplete, for the unimaginable suffering he had inflicted. The conviction brought a degree of closure, a formal acknowledgement of the horrors, but for the victims and their families, the scars would remain. The long journey for accountability had finally reached a significant milestone, but the healing process would take far longer. The Lugda case forced Germany to confront uncomfortable truths about its child protection systems. It became a stark reminder that even in a developed nation with robust social services, the most vulnerable can fall through the cracks, not just once, but repeatedly. The parliamentary inquiry's findings of systemic failures across multiple levels were a call to action, prompting reforms and a renewed focus on vigilance. The case transcended the local community, becoming a national conversation about accountability, institutional blind spots, and the paramount importance of listening to and acting upon every single complaint related to child safety. It was a brutal lesson, bought at an unbearable cost, about the constant need for oversight and the imperative to never take the safety of children for granted, no matter how idyllic the setting may seem. Beyond the legal verdicts and parliamentary reports lies the immeasurable cost to the 285 victims. Their childhoods were stolen, their trust shattered, their innocence irrevocably lost. For many, the journey of healing is a lifelong one, fraught with challenges and pain. The psychological wounds run deep, affecting not only the victims but also their families and the broader community of Lugda. This case serves as a harrowing reminder that while justice may eventually be served, and systems may be reformed, the human toll of such prolonged and widespread abuse is profound and enduring. It forces us to ask ourselves, as individuals and as a society, how we can truly ensure that such a tragedy is never allowed to unfold again, hidden in plain sight, for 2 long decades. The responsibility, ultimately, falls on all of us. The quiet streets of Lugda, once synonymous with peaceful community life, now carry the indelible mark of this horrific chapter. The campsite, a place of family recreation, is forever tainted by the revelations. The memories of childhood summers, once carefree, are now overlaid with a dark shadow for those who were there. The process of rebuilding trust, not just in institutions but within the community itself, is slow and arduous. The case exposed a collective trauma, a wound that will take generations to heal. For every new family that considers a visit to such a place, for every parent entrusting their child to the care of others, the lessons of Lugda serve as a chilling, necessary reminder. Vigilance must be constant, and the cries of the vulnerable must never again go unheard or unanswered. The echoes of this tragedy resonate far beyond the small German town, a universal warning. The Lugda case, with its 2-decade timeline and its staggering victim count, has undeniably left a deep mark on German society and its approach to child protection. The parliamentary inquiry's unequivocal confirmation of systemic failures provided the impetus for significant reforms within youth welfare services. The mechanisms for reporting and investigating suspicions have been re-evaluated and strengthened. Training for social workers and other officials has been intensified, with a renewed emphasis on critical thinking and proactive intervention. While no system can ever be foolproof against the darkness of human depravity, the hope is that the lessons learned from Lugda will help to create a more robust and responsive safety net, one that truly prioritizes the well-being of every child. The memory of the 285 victims serves as a permanent reminder, a solemn vow that such widespread institutional blindness must never be allowed to happen again.